Hey y'all. It is wet and rainy and windy today. You might hear a few moans and groans and creaks from my house because my house is old and it's windy and the wind is blowing every which way. So hope you guys are doing okay today. I'm staying dry, not going outside, not doing anything like that. My dogs are sleeping. Salem does not like storms. He gets very scared when he hears thunder. And luckily, there hasn't been any thunder so far, so let's hope that that doesn't happen. And Clover doesn't really care. She just sleeps through all of it. But other than that, I've been watching Netflix. I've been taking it easy, and you know what? It's okay to have days like that. Just like I was a little bit sad the other day. It's okay to be lazy and not accomplish a whole lot. It's okay. So I'll keep telling myself that. If you guys need to take a day, take a day. Because it's one of those days for me today. But I did have to make sure that I read our next chapter in our book. After that really confusing one yesterday, Pet Day, was very confusing. I know that the video was long and tired. The video was long, and I had used the whole end of it to explain everything. So if you stuck with it, awesome. If you didn't, it wasn't my favorite chapter. But we're going to go on to the next chapter, which is chapter 7, A Bad Word. And I don't think it's a bad word that you think it's going to be. Okay, so chapter 7, A Bad Word. Early in the morning, a white limousine drove up to Wayside School, just like always. The chauffeur got out of the car, then opened the passenger door, just like always. Mr. Kidswatter stepped out of the car. "Thank you, James," he said. "My name is David," said the chauffeur, just like always. Mr. Kidswatter entered the school building. "Good morning, Mr. Kidswatter," said Mrs. Day, the school secretary. She handed him a cup of hot coffee, just like always. "Thank you, Miss Knight," said Mr. Kidswatter. He walked into his office, except his office door was closed. He smashed into it, spilling coffee all over his green suit. "Who closed my door?" he demanded. "Why didn't you just open it?" asked Mrs. Day. "It's always open in the morning," said Mr. Kidswatter. "How was I supposed to know it was closed this time?" Up on the 30th story, Mrs. Jules took roll. Todd was absent. "Oh dear, I hope Todd is all right," said Mrs. Jules. "Todd's never all right," said Joy. She and Mauricio laughed. Damien looked at Mrs. Jules. Ever since he returned to Wayside School, he thought there was something different about her, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. Mr. Kidswatter's voice came over the PA system. "Good morning, boys and girls." There was the usual pause. "Today I want to talk about doors," said Mr. Kidswatter. "This should be interesting," said Mrs. Jules. "Do you know how many doors there are in this school building?" asked Mr. Kidswatter. "Oh, here's a puppy." Mrs. Jules shook her head. "Well, there are a lot, over 30, and some of you probably have doors at home too, maybe more than one. All those doors. Think about it." "Well, Mr. Kidswatter has certainly given us something to think about this morning," said Mrs. Jules. "So remember," said Mr. Kidswatter, "and please be careful. Always check to see if a door is open before going through it. And if it's not open, open it. If you can't open it yourself, ask someone to open it for you. This may not make a lot of sense to you now, but someday you'll thank me." Mrs. Jules looked around the class. "That's good advice," she said. "I think most of you already knew it, but at least it's nice to know we have a principal who cares." "I hate doors," shouted Mr. Kidswatter. "It's a dumb word. Door, door, door. Who made up that word anyway?" Mrs. Jules waited a little longer, but Mr. Kidswatter seemed to be finished. "Some people just don't like doors," she said. "I have made a new rule," declared Mr. Kidswatter. "You may no longer say that word. You know what word I mean, but don't say it. Instead, I have made up a new word for you. Guzak. Open the Guzak. Shut the Guzak. Lock the Guzak. Don't you think that's a better word? I do. From now on, that other word is a bad word. I have made my decision." Everyone turned around and looked at the Guzak. Suddenly it opened. Todd entered. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said. "That's okay," said Mrs. Jules. "I'm just glad you're not sick or hurt." "My dad locked his keys in the car," Todd explained. "We had to use a coat hanger to unlock the door." Everyone gasped. Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. So I guess now everyone's going to get in trouble when they say the word door, except they've got to call it a goozak. Don't know who comes up with this stuff. So yeah, that's chapter 7, a bad word. Tomorrow, we will be reading chapter 8, Santa Claus. All right, guys. Hope you'll have a great rest of your day. Get your work done. Get your reading done. You should be reading. Hopefully you're reading those new books you got. And I will be back tomorrow.